What's going on, guys? Today we're going to talk about what you need today so that you can go into work tomorrow and quit your job to make games. Sound good? Well, stick around. Quitting your jobs to become an indie game developer is by far one of the scariest things you can do. What you're doing is you're sacrificing your steady income so that you can try and reclaim your time and your freedom back. And you're also hoping for that slight chance of indie success so that you don't need to go back and work another dead-end job again. That is the dream, right? Well, you're asking yourself, what are the chances? The average solo indie game developer can make themselves a whopping $11,800 per year. I know, it sounds too good to be true. I'm not lying to you. So on a serious note, before we talk about this, I'm just letting you know that quitting your day job to become an indie game developer, solo especially, is a risky endeavor, and I'm by no means endorsing that you guys do so. Disclaimer, check. The first thing that you're going to need is security. And in its base form, security just means safety. So what resource do you need every day to maintain your standard of living and your existence? That isn't toilet paper. Money, guys. It sounds so simple, but if you don't have enough money saved up or a way to acquire more money while you're not working a 9-to-5 job, then you really are dead in the water to begin with. There is no way that you're going to be able to support yourself and pay the bills and eat and clothe yourself if you don't have the sufficient finances to be able to pay your time in development. I know some of you are probably saying, but I'm passionate about it, it's what I really want to do, but passion don't pay the bills. There's a number of ways and they all deserve their own time, their own video really, discussing them, but you could look at Kickstarter, you could look at Indiegogo, nearly the same thing. YouTube, Udemy, you can create courses and teach people, publishers, investors, or if you have rich parents, whatever works for you. These are all sources of income and some of them require more work than others. But if you're quitting your job based on just a dream and your passion and the promise of success, then stop right here. If none of these are options for you, then you can always consider doing a casual job or a part-time job to really free up that extra time. But really, it's not quitting your job. You still feel like you're on the daily grind, and that's not what this video is about. Cannot reiterate enough. If you haven't got the money to start, then don't start. If it's not just you, if you've got a family and 2 kids, then don't do it. You're only going to put yourself and them into a tough position, and it's going to feel much worse when you're going to have to go back to work. The second thing that you need is you need a workspace. Now, if you're a single guy at home and your desk is at the end of your bed, that's all you need and you're fine, you're good to go. But if you're like me and you have a family at home, then acquiring a workspace is critical to you being able to continue working on your game. The first thing that you really need to consider is getting yourself an office, and not just a desk, but a pure dedicated office that you go and sit down to work and not much else. Having it in your mind that this is a dedicated office where I go and I do my work, I go and I work on my game here, serves to only focus you and motivate you to continue working on your game. I'd say it's nearly critical to organize yourself an office that has privacy, that's nearly soundproof, that you can use, and not just a room that you can go and mess around in. Another thing that you need to consider is, do you have all of the equipment that you require to be a successful indie game developer? Now, all the equipment is different depending on what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. If you're making a VR game, then you need to ensure that you've got the space and the equipment required to actually make the VR game. If you're making a console game, make sure you actually own the console you're going to be creating it for and you have a developer kit. Getting into the more personal things now, number 3 is, do you have the drive to actually make games? Or in general, do you have the drive to actually complete things that you begin? You should ask yourself, are you truly passionate about making games? Have you been playing games ever since you can remember? Have you been wanting to be a game developer ever since you were 10 years old? Have you been designing little games and systems which you've been working on developing? All of these things are questions that you need to ask yourself. And you need to ask yourself, are you someone that follows through and finishes? If you are, then great, you've got a huge advantage. But if you're not, and you know that you're flaky and you can be unreliable, then you really do need to be honest with yourself. It's not a small matter. This is your lifestyle, this is your existence, this is your income, your ability to take care of yourself and loved ones if you have them. If you know that you don't have the follow through to make a game, then don't put yourself and your family in that position. It's only going to turn out badly, and you're going to face the fact that you're just going to have to go back into the workforce. You're going to have to work another dead-end job that you're just not really passionate about, you don't enjoy, and you're just doing it for the money so that you can just continue to live your life. I get it, it's horrible, I know what it's like. If you do feel like you don't have this follow through, then what you should try and do is start making a game in your spare time and get it to a good stage, get it to a prototype, even get it to an alpha before you start considering, oh, maybe there's a chance I could make some money out of this through Kickstarter or Indiegogo or Fig or whatever it is. Or you can go to a publisher or an investor if you create yourself a company. Whatever you do, however you do it, make sure that you start in the lowest risk way possible. Really develop your drive and your follow through and make yourself not that flaky person anymore, but someone that actually says they're going to do something and follows through and does it and makes themselves proud and the people proud around them. The fourth thing that you need before you even consider quitting your job to make games is, do you have the talent required to make the game that you're aiming to make? So before you quit your job, you need to assess what skills that you have currently, what skills are required for the game that you're going to be making. And then in that, you're going to identify which skills you're lacking for this game and how are you going to plug those gaps. Are you going to spend the time, which is the money, to upskill yourself in that specific skill? I'm a coder, don't know how to 3D model. Okay, I'm going to spend time doing this. All of that time is money that you're investing in yourself, but it's also detracting away from the total amount of time you can actually dedicate to finishing your game. And the less focused you are on what your core current skills are, the less and less and less you're going to be able to work in your game if you're going to try and do everything. Now, there are two things that you can potentially do here. You can try to appeal to people online or other developers that you know with the skills that you're missing to work with you in their spare time, or if they're even willing, or maybe they're willing to quit their job with you and work on this game full time with you. That is the best result that you can hope for. But just ensure that they have the skills that you need before you get them on board, and definitely before you start making any money. And you need to have an awkward conversation about, oh, how's the split work? If you haven't had that conversation with any developers that you're working with, have that conversation now. It'll likely save yourselves a hell of a lot of fighting and potentially any lawsuits, should you guys actually be successful. The second option that you can consider if you want to remain solo and as indie as possible is you can actually contract out these parts of the game that you are not skilled in and that you want just expedited. You're definitely going to have to screen these contractors and their portfolios for quality, but it's a hell of a lot quicker than you learning a skill by yourself and still not being at the level of most of these guys that you're considering. Aside from the games development side of things, you also need to be across the business and marketing aspect of game development, and you need to give yourself the best opportunity to actually sell your game once it's finished. A lot of developers make games and then they sit on it and unsure what to do with it once they've made it. This is the worst position that you can put yourself in. Especially as a solo indie game developer, you're relying on sales to be able to fund your existence, and you're relying on sales to be able to fund this game's development, but not just this one, but your next game's development. Which takes me into the next point. Number 5, are you a professional person? Game development is going to be your job. Are you taking this seriously? Unless you have yourself a publisher which does all this marketing and events and promos and whatever else it is, if they get your game in front of people, unless you have someone like that, then you need to be able to do this yourself. That's the advantage of having yourself a publisher and being added to a library of other published games by them. It gives you an audience which you can release your game to. But if you don't have that and you're doing this on your own, then you need to build that audience yourself. I've spoken about this in other videos. What happens is once your game's finished, this whole thing becomes a sales job for a short period of time. You need to get as many copies and as many sales as you possibly can so that you can fund your next game, so that you can fund your lifestyle. If you're not doing that, it's just irresponsible. It's not a good business. As a business decision, you should just quit. You're giving full time to a hobby. The sheer reality of things is, though, that most businesses for the first 24 months, the first 2 years, aren't going to be profitable. Chances are you're going to be digging into your savings. You might make some of that back in sales, might. But once you build yourself up a library of games, they're games that you can consistently use as, I know it sounds very corporate, but this is how game studios survive. They have a library of games. These games aren't free. Sometimes they go on sale, but most of the time they're another source of income. It's a way to pull in more audience. If they created a new game, they've got this other game which is maybe slightly cheaper, just as good by the same people, as income streams. This is a way that indies can monetize their audience. Now, assuming that you're creating your first game, your job is to market yourself as early as possible and build yourself up an audience so that you have someone to shout and scream, "My game is done" to, and people to purchase your game. Now, the second part of that is, are you charismatic? Are you likable? Are you personable? It's a core attribute that you really do need to be successful as a game developer. You need to be able to convey your message, your game, your purpose across to people that don't know who you are, what you do, and why they should even be interested in you. As an indie dev who's working from home, you're probably going to be speaking to a lot of publishers, journalists, other developers, gamers. There's a huge range of people, different people that you're going to be speaking to out there. There are different ways to communicate, and communicating with people on their level with what's important to them. Are you a good storyteller? Are you able to talk about figures and numbers and return on investment? Are you able to sell your idea and get people invested and passionate in your game? Are you able to connect with your peers and other developers for advice and collaborations, whatever it happens to be? All of these are different ways to communicate, and what you're trying to achieve is all very different depending on who the audience is. But what's important is that you are that charismatic, professional, likable person. If you aren't, then you're going to find yourself struggling to achieve even basic results. That $11,800 is likely going to be lower because you're not going to be able to acquire an audience, or you're not going to be able to sign with a publisher because you're not able to convey your message or sell the benefits of what your game could or is going to be. There's a fantastic channel called Charisma on Command. I'd suggest you subscribe to it, watch as many of the videos as you want, don't overdo it, and practice these skills. It's a channel where they delve into all the intricacies of being charismatic, being able to hold a conversation, be able to pull people in with your words. I know it's a scary thing, but it is a skill that can be practiced. So I recommend that you do take the time to work on that, since it will reap you benefits in the very long run, especially if you're going to quit your job and become a game developer full time. So like I said, if you're feeling unsure, if you're not ready to take the risk, then don't quit your job just yet. But if you are, then take the leap, feel confident, take all of the necessary steps, do as much research as you possibly can to give yourself the best opportunity to succeed, because I want you guys to succeed. Now, if you did get some value, then please, seriously, consider subscribing, liking, sharing, and commenting below. Tell me, where are you guys at with your game dev journey, and are you ready to quit your job and work on your game full time? Tell me in the comments below. Where are you guys at with your game? Post links to it. Post links to your social media as well. Next week, we're going to talk about game development education, whether you should go to university, a college, or work on it in your own time. So subscribe and hit the bell button if you want to be reminded of that one.